Hi everybody, here's Aquifel again, this time with Aquifels 10 count. I've already talked about it during the other videos, or in my other videos. I want to talk about the worst and the best Wrestlemania main events of all time, looking at how Roman Reigns versus Triple H could go horribly wrong, or it could be awesome, depending on how WWE books the match and who in the end wins. So without further ado, let's start with the 10 worst WrestleMania main events of all time. They should be fun to talk about. And number 10, the 10th worst WrestleMania main event of all time, in my opinion, is Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Hot Rod Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff at WrestleMania 1. Why is it such a bad match or on this list? Well, it wasn't a bad match per se, but well, the build-up was great. It really was important for WWE at the time, but yeah, the match itself, it was rather average. And other matches, I've considered the actual match quality, the wrestling, the build-up, the importance, the big-time feel it had, and yeah, somehow this match, it wasn't a good match. Wasn't bad either. So all in all, Mr. T in the ring. Yeah, you have the celebrity power he has, not celerity. We're not at Vampire the Masquerade here. The celebrity power from Mr. T, sure, it helped. Muhammad Ali as the special guest enforcer, yeah, that worked. But in the end, it was a lot of chaos. It was pretty decent overall, but yeah, it just falls short compared to other WrestleMania main events. At number 9, we have the WrestleMania 4 main event, Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. And yeah, we had after the whole stuff with Hogan and Andre and the $1 Million Man trying to buy the title, yeah, it was vacated and there was a tournament. Well, problem number 1 is the Trump Plaza for WrestleMania 4 and 5, somehow the atmosphere and the crowd, it was rather meh. Wasn't a great crowd, wasn't a great atmosphere in the arena, so yeah, overall, the whole WrestleManias, these two WrestleManias really lacked something that made WrestleMania what WrestleMania is. And of course, it shows in the main event. We have a classic story and a good build-up, in fact, because DiBiase, the heel, he gets a bye in the second round. His first round match wasn't that hard, and Savage, of course, he had hard opponents, and he was battered and torn and really weary and exhausted in the main event. Thus, the main event was rather short, and the worst thing is, he didn't beat DiBiase himself, which would have really made him the hero. No, Hulk Hogan helped him, and well, wrestling-wise, it was decent, but something just didn't add up, and something just did not work for me with this match. I mean, that's all my opinion, and something about this match just didn't click with me. Although on paper, everything was great. On the 8th worst WrestleMania main event of all time, number 8, Bret Hart versus Yokozuna at WrestleMania 10. And yeah, well, the match itself was not great. No surprise here. Yokozuna was rather agile for his weight, but well, he has weighed a lot, really a lot, and he could do stuff that people with his girth and mass couldn't do, but still, that doesn't mean he was an awesome worker. And fucking cigarette here. Doesn't mean he was an awesome worker. Well, he wasn't. So Bret Hart had not too much to work with, and although the build-up throughout WrestleMania 10 with the brother feud between Bret and Owen and how it all built up to this WrestleMania, even the match with Luger, between Yokozuna and Luger before, it was, everything on paper was great, but the match itself fell short. It didn't feel that important. It wasn't like Bret Hart just beat the monster that dominated WWE ever since it beat Hogan at the King of the Ring 1993. So yeah, on paper everything was great, but it didn't feel really like it didn't feel like that big a deal. Somewhere along the way, it just fell short. So it deserves to be on this list, even though it wasn't a horrendous match. Those are farther up the list. Yeah. Number 7. Hulk Hogan, once again, against King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 2. Well, somehow I like this match. It wasn't that bad. In fact, it was pretty decent. They had this whole Hogan was injured with his ribs stuff. It was a cage match, and Hogan bled. And King Kong Bundy, at that time, he was a threat to Hulk Hogan. But looking back, yeah, somehow, yeah, you realize no, he was no threat to Hulk Hogan. And yeah, because King Kong Bundy sure was kind of a deal in the 80s, but he was not that big. He was no Roddy Piper, he was no Andre the Giant later on, he was no Randy Savage. It just felt like a little bit of a filler main event. It didn't mean that much, although the match itself wasn't that bad, in my opinion. And of course, WrestleMania 2, one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, splitting a WrestleMania into 3 arenas and having 3 separate main events, with Hogan Bundy being the main event. Well, somehow that all just fell apart, and some of that rubbed off on that match here. So at number 7, Hogan versus Bundy, steel cage match. Number 6, Taker versus Sid. At WrestleMania 13, because let's be honest here, Shawn Michaels, I don't know all the details who was supposed to face who in the main event, but Taker vs. Sid was not the thing WWE had hoped for at WrestleMania 13. And yes, the real deal, the huge match on that card was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart, and that was pure wrestling magic. And yeah, following that, you have Taker versus Sid. Sid was not as green as he was in his first stint in the WWE, and Taker always was a good performer, but he hadn't really found his WrestleMania streak magic stuff yet. And it took until WrestleMania 17, Taker versus Triple H, until he really delivered huge matches at WrestleMania. Everything before that was mediocre at best. And so this match, yeah, you have Sid, who just, I just don't like him that much. Nothing personal, but in the ring, I was never a fan of his work, even though at this time he, in the ring, at least had improved compared to everything he did in WCW and in the WWE before that. So, yeah, well, you have Taker versus Sid. It just seems like there was no huge build-up to it. You didn't have this whole, oh my god, that will be the match in 3 to 5 months. There was no big feel to it. It wasn't that important, and somehow, yeah, it was. They had to do something, and they did this, and you really feel that during the match. And the match itself, from a wrestling point of view, nothing memorable either. So this was rather disappointing, even more so after such a great match like Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart. At number 5, we have Randy Orton versus Triple H at WrestleMania 25. Finally, something a little bit fresher, not so 90s, 80s stuff. And why is this on here? I like Triple H. I've always been a fan of him in the ring, even when he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I liked his work in the ring, and Orton can be really good. He often goes back to wrestles and such stuff, but he is a very good worker, and he knows, has a certain psychology to what he does. The problem here was, again, following something like Undertaker versus HBK1 at WrestleMania 25, well, hard to top that. And even the three-way, it wasn't really good. It was no huge WWE three-way or triple threat match, but it was fun to watch. And now you have Randy Orton versus Triple H in a storyline that didn't click from the start. You had Orton with his legacy Goonies, who Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr., who just, yeah, they didn't seem menacing to anybody. Yeah, he won the Royal Rumble thanks to legacy, but in the end, boring. Especially as they fought again at no, not an Elimination Chamber, No Way Out. Back then it was still No Way Out. At No Way Out 2009, Shane McMahon beat up for most of the match Randy Orton, and he couldn't beat Shane McMahon. Randy Orton was not able to beat Shane McMahon without the legacy interfering. And it wasn't even this, the end of the feud here. They had another match at Backlash. And this match, wrestling-wise, what they did, technically, it wasn't a bad match. The handiwork was good, but it was boring. You had no big Mania main event feel, not even a Mania feel. That was just another title match that could have happened anywhere else in the country, any other pay-per-view, no matter where on the card you place it. It would have, it just didn't belong in the main event of a WrestleMania. It didn't feel big. It didn't feel important, and of course, although the handiwork was good, it was boring. And a boring match, well, that's number 5 for you. Number 4, the fourth worst WrestleMania main event of all time. Bret Hart versus Yokozuna, respectively. Hulk Hogan running in and saving the day against Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9. I loved the atmosphere at WrestleMania 9. The whole, it was outdoor, and the whole Roman theme, well, somehow I liked that, but a problem was, again, it was a very short match between Bret Hart and Yokozuna, who just won the Royal Rumble. And yeah, somehow Yokozuna, he was a huge dude, so yeah, he was a legitimate threat to any champion, but he wasn't really the main event guy, the kind of heel you want in the main event. So yeah, could Bret Hart place the sharpshooter on him? That was the question. After 8 minutes we knew, yeah, he can. But we also knew Mr. Fuji would do anything so Yokozuna can win the title. And then Hulk Hogan storms up. And yeah, Mr. Fuji, after, and from logically, it doesn't make any sense. Why would he say, well, my client just won a match. Why don't you want one right now? Step into the ring, please. Even if we as fans know that this is booked, worked, and in the end something like a stunt show with a lot of at times soap opera elements. Yes, somehow it still doesn't make sense why Mr. Fuji would do that. His client just had a match, and he says, well, let's have another against Hulk Hogan, of all people. Yeah. And then Hulk Hogan got the title. It saved the day for the audience back then, but looking back, it somehow just is stupid. It was just a way to drop the title to Hogan again without hurting Hart. And yeah, well then, Hogan left the company a few months later, losing the title back to Yokozuna. It was totally unnecessary and somehow just stupid. And both matches, of course, weren't that great. And they didn't feel too big either. Still, 3 matches were even worse. And now we come to the matches that weren't, not too shabby, but, well, not good either. Now we're talking about bad matches. The third worst WrestleMania main event of all time, John Cena versus The Miz at WrestleMania 27. The Miz is a good talker. He always was. In the ring back then, at WrestleMania 27, he was green. Very green. Too green to carry a main event, WrestleMania main event. Nowadays, he has improved in the ring. He has gotten even better on the mic, but even now, I wouldn't really want to see him as the top heel in the main event of WrestleMania, although he's one of the heels that is even close to being able to do something like that in the WWE, although he's gotten better, and now they decide not to really use him. Back then, he thought he was the shit, let's put him in the main event. Yeah, they built it up quite nice with the whole, right before the match, you can hate me now. Yeah, it worked. And, of course, Cena, love-hate relationship with the crowd. Still, everything they did in the ring, it was just so boring. And Alex Riley, it was boring. It was from a wrestling standpoint of view, or point of view, whatever. It just was a bad match. It really was bad because The Miz was too green, and Cena at that time was able to have great matches with the right opponent. Nowadays, he is even better. He can make a match big just by being in there, no matter who it is against. With The Miz, it just didn't work out, and in the end, the only thing this match was really supposed to do was build up The Rock versus John Cena once in a lifetime for WrestleMania 28. And that's how I, in the end, felt. It was just the build-up for next year's WrestleMania main event, and as such, all the thing that went well with this match, somehow it helps The Rock versus John Cena, not this one. Number 2, and it really was number 2, Hulk Hogan versus Sid, at that time Justice, at WrestleMania 8. Everybody just wanted to see Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. I mean, at that time they were in the same company for the first time in since they never were in the same company when they were huge stars. I don't know if they were before, but at some point, doesn't matter. Hogan versus Flair was the match people wanted to see. Somehow, nobody really knows, a lot of people certainly do know, but none of them talks about it openly, why this match wasn't done. They wanted Hogan versus Sid Justice, because Sid Justice betrayed Hogan at the Royal Rumble 1992. So, Hogan versus Sid. At that time, that was what I was talking about earlier, Sid was very green in the ring. I mean, very green. I mean, he just sucked, to be honest. In a 5-star War Games match, he was the one who managed to, he didn't do that much, but he hurt Brian Pillman with his powerbomb, so knocked him unconscious. Shouldn't happen to a main event superstar. So, Hogan versus Sid Justice. Nobody wanted to see that, almost nobody, and then Sid Justice came out, tried to attack Hogan while he was coming out. Hogan's theme song, I Am a Real American, it was still playing while Hogan beat the shit out of Sid, and everybody knew at that moment, that's not a level playing field. Hogan is the huge star, Sid is some big dude he has to beat, so everybody is happy. And the match, one of the worst WrestleMania matches I ever saw. They didn't do that much. A little bit power play and not even a good big guy match. It just stunk the place up. And in the end, not that the match was bad enough as it was. No, the end. Papa Shango, our beloved good father, godfather, or later before that, Kama Mustafa, he messed up his entrance, and nobody really knows why Hogan won via disqualification. And why the fuck Papa Shango was running in there after the bell had already rung? It didn't make any sense. This was a horrible match from beginning to start. at the beginning to the end. And I'm talking about how the feud started till how the feud ended. Sid just wasn't ready, and Hogan did the same Hogan stuff as always. Before we head to the worst WrestleMania main event of all time, 3 short dishonorable mentions. Normally you have honorable mentions, not on this list. Number 1, WrestleMania 3, Hulk Hogan vs. Andre the Giant. This match didn't make the list because it had a huge build-up. Possibly one of the greatest of all time. It really was important. It really felt important, but god damn it, this match, the story even made sense, but the match itself. Hogan couldn't... He never was a great wrestler. In the 80s, he often was just your typical gimmicky superhero, and that was what he did in the ring. Andre, on the other hand, he was a capable worker for a guy with his height and his mass, but at that time he suffered from his health wasn't in the best, or he was not in the best shape health-wise. He had health issues, and yeah, of course, you couldn't expect them to have a great match. But the match, I think it just was plain boring. It was a huge match, definitely one of the biggest WrestleMania main events of all time, not the greatest. It was voted the worst work match of the year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter in 1987, and that says a lot. But the build-up and everything around this, everything else, except for the wrestling inside the ring, went great, so that match got a little bit lucky. Same goes for the good old Randy Savage Hulk Hogan match at WrestleMania 5. I didn't really like this, or didn't really care for the story. I would have loved to see Macho Man win, because Macho Man could wrestle, and even as a child I liked people like Shawn Michaels and Macho Man more than Hulk Hogan. Well, it was a typical Hogan 80s main event, and to be honest, one of the best of those, because most of them sucked. But somehow it got lucky too, because on paper some stuff did work for the match. The match itself wasn't that bad, so it got lucky. It got really close to being on the list, but other stuff was just worse, or didn't feel as didn't feel as good as that one. So don't know. And the last one, Hulk Hogan vs. Sergeant Slaughter at WrestleMania 7. Horrendous storyline, absolutely distasteful, using the Gulf War to make Hulk Hogan the American hero and Sergeant Slaughter the bad Irani, whatever. Who knows the difference? Guy. The match itself, well, there was intensity, but in the end, after Slaughter, with the help of General Adnan, got the advantage, it was rest hold after rest hold after, oh wait, Hulk up, boom, leg drop, win. Not a good match. The build-up, I didn't really like the build-up, but it worked. The atmosphere was good. It worked, and the crowd was really into it. So this one got lucky too. And now, the worst WrestleMania main event of all time. Well, you can guess it. WrestleMania 11. The worst WrestleMania aside from WrestleMania 2. Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow. The problem wasn't that the WWE tried to utilize Lawrence Taylor's celebrity status. They did it way better with Mike Tyson later on. But this match, Taylor, he was a football player, and he did football stuff in the ring most of the time. And Bam Bam sold the spots for him. He really worked his ass off. But Bam Bam, I mean, it was 1995. Let's be honest. Bam Bam probably was one of the greatest heels of one of the biggest heels and most main event heels with most main event credibility at that time, but well, in such a match he just wasn't a main event heel. And now we have a good worker busting his ass off, so Lawrence Taylor looks at least a little bit decent. But yeah, just watching it, blending out that Bam Bam sells the spots in a way that make Lawrence Taylor look at least decent. Just looking at the match itself, Bam Bam comes off like a complete joke. Taylor does his best to appear like a little bit of a wrestler, and yeah, Bam Bam, a wrestler, the guy who almost had Bret Hart at the King of the Ring 1993, he now sits here and gets his ass handed to him by Lawrence Taylor. And Taylor, of course, couldn't take that many bumps. The few he did almost, they were pretty harsh for a football player. But somehow it just didn't, yeah. The match itself, let's face it, the match was horrendous. It made Bam Bam look like a complete jack-off. There was no build-up that I could say, whoa, I really want to see that match. I'm really invested in it. It didn't feel big. Duh. It was, in every aspect, in every single aspect, probably the worst WrestleMania main event of all time, and rightfully gets the questionable honor of being my worst WrestleMania main event of all time. Even Roman Reigns beating 50 people, the whole locker room storming out and trying to stop him because Triple H, placed a bounty on Reigns' head. Even that, Roman Reigns beating the whole roster, or fending the whole roster off and pinning Triple H wouldn't be as bad as what this shit was. And I'm really sorry for Bam Bam Bigelow because he was a good worker. But that match, oh, no, really not. So, I hope you enjoyed the list, and you can live with some, some little problems with the English language. I'm not a native speaker, you know that. So, hopefully you tune in next time with I don't know what will happen next. Maybe a review or whatever. But before WrestleMania, of course, there are still the 10 best WrestleMania main events of all time. At least my 10 best main events of all time are yet to come, and I hope you tune in again. Yours, Aquifel.